Alex and his mother, Sarah's life changed forever after that tragedy. They moved to a smaller house on the outskirts of town, trying to start over. But the memories and pain of loss haunted them, especially Alex. It was Friday the 13th. Alex came home from school late, having stayed late for extra math classes. His mom left a note saying that she had gone to her aunt's house in a neighboring town and would be back tomorrow afternoon. The boy sighed. Another lonely night. A storm was raging outside. The wind howled in the chimney, the rain drummed on the roof, and lightning lit up the dark sky every now and then. Alex tried to distract himself by watching TV and doing his homework, but his anxiety never left him. Around midnight, he finally went to bed. As he lay in bed, Alex looked up at the ceiling, listening to the rain pounding on the windows. Suddenly, a particularly bright bolt of lightning lit up the room, and in its flash he saw a silhouette outside the window. Alex's heart skipped a beat. The figure of his late father was standing in the window. But something was wrong. His father's face, usually kind and smiling, was distorted with anger and hatred, and in his hand he held a long, ominously shiny dagger. Alex froze in terror, unable to move or scream. The figure behind the window slowly raised its hand and began to open the frame. The cold night air rushed into the room, along with the smell of wet earth and decay. A creature that looked like his father crawled through the window, leaving muddy, wet footprints on the floor. It straightened up to its full height, and Alex saw that the creature was taller and thinner than his real father. His skin was grayish, and his eyes glowed with an unnatural yellow light. "Son," the creature wheezed in a voice that only vaguely resembled James Foster's, "I have come for you." Alex finally managed to move. He leaned back against the wall, desperately looking for something to defend himself with. His eyes fell on the baseball bat that stood beside his bed, a gift from his real father on his 13th birthday. The creature raised the dagger, preparing to strike. "You have to be with me," it hissed, "in the dark, forever." At the last moment, Alex gathered all his courage. He grabbed the bat and swung, screaming. The bat hit the creature's head with a dull thud. The creature staggered, but did not fall. It rushed at Alex again, but the boy was ready. He struck again, putting all his fear and anger into it. With each blow, the image of his father disintegrated like a badly molded mask. Underneath it was something dark and shapeless, a creature made of shadows and nightmares. "You're not my father!" Alex screamed, continuing to strike. "My father loved me! He would never come to harm me!" The creature howled in pain and rage. It tried to grab Alex with its long, bony fingers, but the boy was faster. He jumped away and delivered another crushing blow. Finally, after one last powerful blow, the creature crumbled into a cloud of black smoke. It whirled around the room, as if looking for a way out, and then flew out the open window with a terrible howl. Alex stood in the middle of the room, breathing heavily, still clutching the bat. He didn't understand what exactly had happened, but he knew one thing. He had faced something supernatural and had emerged victorious. Suddenly, he felt warmth on his shoulder. He turned around and saw the ghostly image of his real father, smiling, loving, just as he remembered him. "I'm proud of you, son," the ghost whispered before disappearing into thin air. Tears streamed down Alex's cheeks, but they were tears of relief and release. He realized that he had finally been able to let go of his pain and fear related to his father's death. Emily Harper has always considered herself a lucky girl. At 22, she had it all: a loving boyfriend, Jake, a promising job at a local newspaper, and plans for a bright future. But one night changed everything. It was a late Friday night. Emily was on her way home after meeting her friends at a local cafe. She decided to take a shortcut through the old park, despite Jake's warning to never walk there at night. The park was dark and quiet. The only sounds were the rustling of leaves under Emily's feet and the distant barking of dogs. Suddenly, she heard footsteps behind her. She turned around but saw no one. Who is it? Emily called, trying to hide the trembling in her voice. There was no answer, but the footsteps grew louder. A tall figure in a black cloak emerged from the darkness. Emily froze in horror when she saw the stranger's face. It was split in half, as if it were made of two different faces. The right half was beautiful, with blue eyes, a straight nose, and plump lips. The left half was horrible, disfigured by scars, with a burning red eye and a gaping mouthful of sharp teeth. "Who? What are you?" Emily whispered, stepping back. "I am the balance," the stranger replied, in a voice that sounded like a mixture of angelic singing and demonic roars. "Light and darkness, good and evil. And you, my dear, will be part of that balance." Emily turned and ran. She ran through the park, desperate to find a way out. But wherever she ran, the park seemed to grow around her. The two-faced one chased her, taking his time. He knew that his victim was not going anywhere. Finally, Emily ran out into the clearing and saw the light of the street lamps behind the trees. Hope sparked in her heart, but suddenly she tripped over a root and fell. Before she could get up, Two-Face was there. He grabbed her hair and pulled her to her feet. "Now you understand," he said, looking her in the eye with both of his different eyes. "No one can escape the balance." Emily screamed as she felt the cold steel enter her body. Her scream dissolved into the silence of the night, and the life left her eyes. Two-Face gently laid Emily's body on the ground and stroked her hair. "Rest in peace, my dear. Your sacrifice will not be in vain." Several hours passed. Jake, concerned that Emily hadn't returned home and wasn't answering her phone, decided to go looking for her. His intuition led him to the park. He found Emily's body on the lawn and fell to his knees, sobbing. "No, no, no," he repeated, holding her cold body close to him. "She's part of something bigger." Jake heard a voice behind him. He turned around and saw Two-Face. Without thinking, Jake grabbed a penknife from his pocket and lunged at the killer. "You're going to pay for this, you bastard!" he shouted, swinging the knife. But Two-Face was faster. In one smooth motion, he dodged Jake's attack and grabbed him by the throat. "Your bravery is admirable," the killer said in his eerie double voice. "But you cannot defeat what you do not understand. Light cannot exist without darkness. Life has no meaning without death." "Let go of me, you monster!" Jake wheezed, trying to break free. Two-Face smiled with both halves of his face. "I am not a monster, Jake. I am a necessity, and you will be part of the balance." The last thing Jake saw was the strange face of his killer, both beautiful and terrifying. Then darkness fell. As the moon rose high in the sky, only two motionless bodies remained in the clearing. Two-Face stood between them, looking up at the stars. "The balance is restored," he whispered, "but the work is never done." With those words, he melted into the shadows, leaving behind only the light scent of roses and the smell of decay. The next morning, the police found the bodies of Emily and Jake. The investigation lasted for months, but the killer was never found. The only clue was the strange testimony of a homeless man who claimed to have seen a man with two faces disappear into the fog. Life in the city gradually returned to normal, but sometimes on dark nights, people would hear strange sounds in the old park, as if someone was singing and roaring at the same time. And no one dared to walk there after sunset anymore, afraid to meet the mysterious two-faced man and become part of his sinister balance. Then Tommy Baker disappeared. Then the Reed twins. With each new case, the panic in the city grew. The police were powerless. There were no traces, no clues. It seemed that the children simply disappeared into thin air and then reappeared, empty, eyeless shells. The eyeless man grabbed Jesse, his long, bony fingers reaching for the boy's eyes. Emma, paralyzed with terror, could only watch as the creature deftly removed her brother's eyes. But when the eyeless one looked at the newly gained eyes, He growled in frustration. "They don't fit!" He roared in a voice that sounded like a mixture of 1,000 suffering souls. "They don't fit again!" In a fit of rage, the eyeless one began to devour Jessie whole. The sounds it made were a horrible mixture of pleasure and anger. Emma, unable to move, felt her mind begin to break down from the horror she was witnessing. Hearing the screams, the twins' parents, Mark and Lisa Carter, ran into the room, but Bozoki was ready. He rushed at them with incredible speed, his claws piercing their chests, ripping out their lungs. "If I can't see, you can't breathe," the demon hissed, devouring their lungs with a hideous snarl. "Your breath is my sight. Your life is my strength." Emma, taking advantage of the moment when the Eyes Only was busy with her parents, ran out of the room and down the street, screaming for help. But the streets of Millwood were empty and dark, as if the town itself had turned its back on the horror that was happening. With every house Emma ran past, she heard more screams and sounds of struggle. The eyeless man had already visited every house, leaving behind only the eyeless bodies of children and suffocated parents. The town turned into a cemetery overnight. Emma ran until she was exhausted. She ended up on the edge of town, at the entrance to the old mines. She knew she couldn't go back, but there was no way forward. Suddenly she heard a familiar whisper behind her. Slowly turning around, Emma saw the eyeless man smiling at her with his terrifying smile. "Your eyes will be the last, little Emma," he whispered as he approached her. "And if they don't fit, well, then Millwood will be my eternal meal. And then I'll move on, looking for new eyes in other cities, other countries. I won't stop until I find what I'm looking for." Emma, realizing that this was her last chance, gathered all her courage and rushed forward, running under the arms of the Eyes Only and running into the mine. She ran in the dark, stumbling and falling, but continuing to move forward. Bozoki chased her, his laughter echoing off the mine walls. "You can't hide from me in the dark, child," his voice boomed. "The darkness is my home." Suddenly, Emma felt the ground beneath her feet disappear. She was falling, screaming, into a deep pit. Her scream mingled with the surprised roar of the Iceless One, who had also fallen into the trap. They fell for what seemed like an eternity until they hit the rocky bottom. Emma felt something break in her body, but the pain was nothing compared to the terror she experienced. The eyeless man lay next to her, moaning in pain. His body was pierced by sharp stones, black blood oozing from his wounds. "No," he wheezed. "Not like this. Not now when I was so close." Emma gathered her last strength and crawled away from the monster. She came across something metal, an old miner's pick.